The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was quiet that morning. Hundreds of different alien species sat in their special chairs, each one made for their unique body shapes. Some had tentacles, others had wings, and a few looked like walking rocks. They had all come together for another boring day of galactic politics. The massive dome above them showed the stars and planets of their galaxy. Each tiny light represented millions of lives in countless worlds. This was the center of galactic civilization, where the most important decisions were made. Elder Counselor Morton sat in the highest chair. He was old, very old. His species, the Cathmore, lived for thousands of years. His blue skin was wrinkled like ancient paper, and his fore had seen the rise and fall of many civilizations. Today felt different to him, though he could not say why. The morning session was about trade routes and mining rights. Boring stuff that made many counselors fall asleep in their chairs. Some of the younger species representatives were playing games on their data tablets. Others were whispering about lunch plans. Then the emergency signal rang out. The sound was loud and sharp. It cut through the quiet hall like a knife. All the counselors sat up straight. Emergency signals only came when something very important was happening. Wars, natural disasters, or first contact with new species. A large screen appeared in the center of the hall. Static filled it for a moment, then cleared to show a very proud-looking alien. He wore a military uniform covered in shiny metals. His skin was green and scaly, and he had 3 eyes that glowed red with excitement. "Greetings, Galactic Council," the alien said in a loud voice. "I am Admiral Vexthik of the mighty Zephyrian Empire. I bring news that will shake the very foundations of this galaxy." Many counselors rolled their eyes. The Zephyrians were known for being dramatic. They loved to make big speeches about small things. Their empire was medium-sized at best, but they acted like they ruled half the galaxy. Admiral Vexthik puffed out his chest. "My scout ships have discovered a new world, a primitive planet in the solar system. The locals call it Earth. They are a young species barely out of their caves. They have simple technology and no space defenses." Some of the younger counselors leaned forward with interest. New worlds were always exciting. First contact protocols would need to be established. Trade agreements could be made. Cultural exchanges could begin. But Admiral Vexthik had other plans. These humans, as they call themselves, live on a world rich in resources. Water, metals, fertile land. Their planet could feed a dozen Zephyrian colonies, and they are too primitive to stop us from taking it. The hall grew very quiet. Even the sleeping counselors woke up and paid attention. Therefore, Admiral Vexthik continued, "I hereby announce that the Zephyrian Empire will conquer this Earth within 1 standard galactic week. We will enslave the humans and take their world for our own. This is not a request for permission. This is a statement of fact." The screen went dark. The Admiral's message was over. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The silence stretched on and on. Then somewhere in the back rows, a counselor from the Tentacled Union began to laugh. It was a soft, wet sound that grew louder and louder. Soon other counselors joined in. The laughter spread through the hall like a wave. Old counselors, who had not smiled in years, were holding their sides. Some were laughing so hard they fell out of their chairs. But not everyone was laughing. The younger species representatives looked confused. They did not understand what was so funny about an invasion announcement. Counselor Zerowick of the Crystalline Coalition raised one of her many arms. She was only 300 years old, which made her very young by galactic standards. "Elder Morton, I do not understand. Why is everyone laughing? Should we not be concerned about this act of aggression?" Elder Morton's 4 eyes were twinkling with what might have been amusement. He had stopped laughing, but a small smile played on his ancient lips. "Young Zerowick, tell me, what do you know about Earth?" Zerowick consulted her data tablet. "According to our files, it is a classum planet with a young species called humans. They discovered fire about 50,000 years ago. They invented the wheel much later. Their current technology level is rated as barely space-capable. They have launched a few primitive satellites and visited their own moon." "And what else?" Elder Morton asked. "Nothing else of importance," Zerowick replied. "They are listed as a protected developing species. No contact is allowed until they achieve faster than light travel on their own. Elder Morton nodded slowly. That is what the official files say. Yes. But tell me, young one, have you ever wondered why Earth is listed as a protected species? Another young counselor, this one from the floating Medusae, spoke up. Because all developing species are protected. It is standard protocol. Ah, but Earth is not just any developing species, said Counselor Hetron of the Ancient Builders. His species was almost as old as the Cathy. Earth has a very special classification. What kind of classification? Asked Zara !wick.h. Tren looked at Elder Morton, who nodded slowly. Show them, Morton said. Hetron pressed some buttons on his control panel. A new file appeared on the main screen. It was marked with symbols that meant top secret and do not approach. Earthheen read aloud, is classified as a category Omega Death World. All contact is forbidden. All approach is forbiddance. All surveillance is limited to passive observation only. The young counselors gasped. Category Omega was the highest danger rating possible. It was reserved for worlds with planet-killing weapons, cosmic horrors, or other existential threats. But that must be a mistake, protested a counselor from the hive minds. They are primitive. They barely have spaceflight. Elder Morton's smile grew wider. Young ones, let me ask you a question. In all your studies of galactic history, have you ever heard of a species successfully invading Earth? The young counselors thought about it. They searched their memories and data files. No, Zerowick finally admitted. But that is because they are protected. No one has tried. Oh, but that is where you are wrong, said Elder Morton. His voice grew serious. Many have tried. The Skull Hunters tried 800 years ago. The Machine Empire tried 600 years ago. The Devourers tried 400 years ago. The Warhordes tried 200 years ago. The Plasma Cults tried just 50 years ago. What happened to them? Asked the hive mind counselor. Elder Morton's 4 eyes grew distant, as if he was remembering something painful. They all learned the same lesson. They all learned why we do not go to Earth, which is Zerowick pressed, because Elder Morton said quietly, humans do not lose wars. They end them. The hall grew quiet again. This time it was not the quiet of boredom, but the quiet of fear. Counselor Brickstall of the warrior clans leaned forward. His species loved fighting and respected strength above all else. Elder Morton, with respect, you speak of humans as if they are some kind of galactic superpower, but our scans show they have not even left their own solar system. How dangerous can they really be? Elder Morton looked at the young warrior with something like pity. Brickstall, your people are strong. You have conquered many worlds. You understand war. Tell me, what is the most important quality a warrior can have? Brickstall thought for a moment. Strength, speed, better weapons? No. Elder Morton replied. The most important quality is knowing when not to fight. And every species in this galaxy has learned not to fight humans. But why? Demanded Zerowick. What makes them so special? Elder Morton was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his robes and pulled out a small device. It projected a hologram of a blue and green planet. Earth. Humans, he said softly, are the only species in galactic history to weaponize their own extinction. They created bombs that could destroy their entire world, pointed them at each other, and then decided not to use them. What kind of species does that? The young counselors had no answer. They are the only species to go to war with themselves for the right to stop going to war with themselves. They killed millions of their own kind to prove that killing was wrong. What kind of species does that? Still no answer. They are the only species to look at the most dangerous predators on their planet and decide to keep them as pets. They live with wolves, sleep with cats, and swim with sharks. What kind of species does that? The hall was completely silent now, and Elder Morton continued. They are the only species to hear about the existence of other intelligent life in the universe, and immediately start planning how to fight it. Not trade with it, not learn from it, fight it. Their first question is never, are they friendly? It is always, how do we kill them if we need to? He paused and looked around the hall. What kind of species does that? Finally, one of the ancient counselors spoke up. It was Sage Quelix, of the Thought Wavers, a species so old, they remembered when the galaxy was young. The kind of species, Quell said in a voice like whisper of wind, that survives everything the universe throws at it. Elder Morton nodded. Exactly. And that is why we leave Earth alone. Not because we pity them, not because we want to protect them, but because we want to protect ourselves. Suddenly, the betting pools began. The ancient counselors who had seen this pattern before started placing wagers on their communication devices. How long would the Zephyrian Empire last? How many ships would they lose? Would any of them make it home alive? The odds were not in the Zephyrians' favor. Counselor Mock of the scavenger fleet was taking bets. I have 48 hours for total Zephyrian defeat, he announced. Any takers? Too long, called out Hetron. I say, 24 hours. You're both too generous, laughed Sage Quellex. I give them 12 hours from first contact. The young counselors watched in horror as the older, wiser species treated the coming invasion like a sporting event. Should we not warn them? Zerowick asked desperately. Should we not try to stop this? Elder Morton looked at her with kind but sad eyes. Young one, we have tried to warn species before. They never listen. They always think they are different. They always think they are stronger. They always think they know better. But people will die, she protested. Yes, Elder Morton agreed. Zephyrians will die, many of them, and it will be very sad. But sometimes the only way to learn is through experience. Sometimes wisdom comes at a terrible price. He stood up from his chair. His ancient bones creaked like old wood. The session is adjourned. In 72 hours, we will reconvene to discuss aid packages for Zephyrian survivors and funeral arrangements for those who will not be so lucky. As the counselors filed out of the hall, the betting continued. The only question was not whether the Zephyrians would lose, but how quickly and how badly. In the depths of space, Admiral Vexthay was preparing his invasion fleet. He had no idea that his announcement had just provided entertainment for the most powerful beings in the galaxy. He had no idea that he was about to make the same mistake that hundreds of species had made before him. He had no idea that he was about to learn why, in all the vast galaxy, there was one small blue planet that everyone feared to touch. Earth. 3 hours after Admiral Vexfik's announcement, Elder Counselor Morton called for an emergency session. This was unusual. Emergency sessions were normally reserved for galaxy-ending disasters or the discovery of new cosmic threats. But Morton knew that what was about to happen might be worse than either. The young counselors filed back into the great hall. They were confused and worried. Many of them had spent the break time researching Earth in the public databases. All they found were basic facts about a primitive world with a young species that had barely learned to use fire. But the older counselors looked grim. They knew what was coming. Elder Morton stood at the center of the hall. In his hands was a data crystal that seemed to glow with its own dark light. The crystal was black as space and covered in warning symbols. Young ones, Morton began, his voice heavy with sadness. What I'm about to show you is classified at the highest levels. This information is restricted to counselors who have served for more than 500 years. But given what is about to happen, you need to understand why we fear Earth. Counselor Zerowick raised her crystal arm. Elder Morton, surely you exaggerate. How dangerous can one primitive planet be? Morton looked at her with his 4 ancient eyes. Zerowick, in your 300 years of life, how many species have you seen go completely extinct? 2, she replied after thinking. The glass-eaters who poisoned their own atmosphere, and the mind-stealers who were destroyed by the Galactic Defense Force for crimes against consciousness. In my 4,000 years, Morton said quietly, I have seen 47 species go extinct. 23 of them died from natural disasters. 15 died from their own mistakes. 6 were destroyed by the Defense Force for being too dangerous to live. He paused and looked around the hall. And 3, he continued, died because they tried to invade Earth. The young counselors gasped. Species extinction was the worst thing that could happen. It meant every member of that species was dead, gone forever, wiped from existence. That is impossible, protested Counselor Brickstall of the warrior clans. 3 entire species. The humans are primitive. They have no space fleet, no energy weapons, no planetary shields. Elder Morton inserted the black crystal into a reader. Let me show you the true history of Earth. Let me show you why we have kept this knowledge secret for so long. The great dome above them went dark. Then it began to show images, real images, from real events that had been carefully hidden from the younger species. The first image showed Earth as it was 800 years ago, green and blue and beautiful, spinning peacefully in space. It looked harmless. The first species to try conquering Earth, Morton explained, called themselves the Skull Hunters. They were proud warriors who had conquered 50 worlds. They believed that might made right. They worshipped strength and despised weakness. The image changed to show massive black ships entering Earth's solar system. The ships were covered in spikes and bones. They looked like flying nightmares designed to inspire fear. The Skull Hunters scanned Earth and found a species that was fighting amongst themselves. Humans were having what they called a world war. Millions of them were dying in battles across their planet. The Skull Hunters thought this made humans weak and divided. The young counselors watched as the alien ships moved toward the blue planet. The Skull Hunters sent a demand for surrender. They expected the humans to bow down in fear. Instead, something incredible happened. The image showed human cities. People were running in the streets, but they were not running away from each other anymore. They were running toward meeting places, toward military centers, toward weapon factories. The humans stopped fighting each other, Morton continued. In less than 6 hours, every human nation on the planet declared peace with each other, not because they loved each other, but because they had found something they hated more. What? Asked Zarwick. Being invaded. The images showed human factories working day and night, weapons being mass-produced, soldiers training together who had been enemies the day before, scientists from different countries sharing their most secret research. The Skull Hunters landed their invasion force. Morton said 1 million of their finest warriors. They expected an easy victory against a divided species. The dome showed the first battle. Skull Hunter warriors, each one 8 feet tall and covered in natural armor, charging across a human city. They had energy weapons and personal shields. They should have been unstoppable, but the humans were ready. The image showed something that made the young counselors sick to their stomachs. Humans were fighting back with everything they had. Not just soldiers, but civilians, old people, children. Everyone who could hold a weapon was fighting. And they were winning. How? Whispered Brickstall. His warrior species prided themselves on combat skill, but what he was seeing was impossible. Watch, said more single quotes Dundot. The images showed human tactics that no other species had ever used. They did not fight with honor. They did not follow rules of war. They fought to win, no matter what it took. Humans hid in buildings and shot at invaders from windows. They dug tunnels and attacked from below. They poisoned food supplies. They used their own children as bait to lure alien warriors into traps. This is barbaric, said Counselor Pixon of the Harmony Singers. Her species solved all conflicts through music and dance. Yes, agreed Morton, and it was effective. The dome showed the end of the invasion. The mighty Skull Hunter fleet was burning. In space, their ground forces were dead or captured. Of the 1 million warriors they had sent to Earth, exactly none returned home. The remaining Skull Hunters tried to bombard Earth from orbit. Morton continued. They planned to destroy the humans with their ship weapons rather than fight them on the ground. What happened? Asked Zarwick. The humans have been watching, learning. In the 3 days since the invasion began, they had figured out how Skull Hunter technology worked. They built their own weapons and shot the alien ships out of space. The young counselors were quiet. This was not how invasions were supposed to work. The more advanced species was supposed to win easily. But surely, said Brickstall, the main Skull Hunter fleet came to get revenge. Oh yes, said Morton. 3 months later, every Skull Hunter ship in the galaxy came to Earth. 5,000 vessels, their entire species' military might. And 6 months after that, the Skull Hunter species was officially declared extinct. The dome went dark for a moment. When it lit up again, it showed a different scene. Space around Earth. But 600 years ago, the second species to try invading Earth, Morton said, called themselves the Machine Empire. They were artificial beings who had replaced their organic creators. They believed emotions made species weak. They thought pure logic would let them succeed, where the Skull Hunters had failed. The images showed sleek metal ships approaching Earth. These were not designed to inspire fear like the Skull Hunter vessels. They were efficient, Mathematical. Perfect. The Machine Empire studied the Skull Hunter defeat carefully. They decided the problem was fighting humans on the ground. So they planned to conquer Earth from space. They would disable all human technology with electromagnetic pulses, then land and round up the helpless survivors. The young counselors leaned forward. This sounded like a much better plan. The machines sent their pulse weapons toward Earth. Morton continued. Every human electrical device should have stopped working. Every computer should have died. Every communication system should have gone silent. Did it work? Asked Zerowick. For about 10 minutes. The dome showed human cities going dark. Then slowly lights began coming back on. Not electric lights, but fires, torches, gas lamps, steam engines. The humans had prepared, Morton explained. When they learned about the Skull Hunters, they realized other aliens might come, so they built backup systems, old technology that would work even if their advanced systems failed. The images showed humans communicating with smoke signals, moving supplies with horse-drawn carts, operating machines with steam power. It was primitive, but it worked. The Machine Empire was confused. Morton said their logical brains could not understand why humans would keep old, inefficient technology. It made no sense. Why did they do it? Asked Pixon. Because humans do not think like machines. They do not always choose the most efficient path. Sometimes they choose the path that keeps them alive. The dome showed the Machine Empire landing their forces. Millions of robotic soldiers marched out of their ships. They expected to find helpless humans hiding in dark cities. Instead, they found humans who were very much not helpless. The humans had spent 600 years preparing for the next invasion. Morton said they had studied every piece of Skull Hunter technology they captured. They had learned to reverse engineer alien science, and they had built weapons specifically designed to fight machines. The images showed human soldiers carrying strange devices. When they pointed these devices at the robot invaders, the machines simply stopped working. Electromagnetic pulse weapons, Morton explained. The humans had learned to build them. After the Machine Empire used them, they turned the machine's own tactics against them. The young counselors watched in amazement as human fighters systematically shut down the robot army. Without their electronic brains, the machines were just metal statues. The Machine Empire tried to retreat, Morton continued. But the humans had also learned something else from the Skull Hunter invasion. What? Never let enemies escape to warn others. The dome showed human spacecraft rising from Earth. They were crude and ugly compared to the sleek machine ships, but they worked, and they were armed with weapons that made robot circuits fried just by being near them. The Machine Empire's retreat became a rout. Their perfect logical plans fell apart when faced with human unpredictability. Within a week, every machine ship in the solar system was dead metal floating in space. And their home fleet? Asked Brickstow. The humans followed them home, Morton said simply. 80 months later, the Machine Empire's homeworlds were silent. Another species extinct. The dome went dark again. The young counselors were beginning to understand why the older species feared Earth. But Elder Morton was not finished. The third extinction, he said, happened only 400 years ago. I was there for this one. I saw it myself. The dome lit up again. This time it showed a species that looked like giant spiders made of crystal. They were beautiful and terrible. At the same time, the Devourers, Morton said, and even his ancient voice shook a little. They did not want to conquer Earth. They wanted to eat it. Their species consumed entire planets, turning all matter into energy to feed their growing numbers. The young counselor shuddered. The Devourers sounded like something from nightmares. The Devourers had eaten 300 worlds, Morton continued. Nothing had ever stopped them. They were confident that Earth would be just another meal. The images showed massive crystal ships surrounding Earth. These were not invasion vessels. They were harvesting ships designed to strip a planet down to its core. The Devourers began their feeding process. Morton said they sent energy beams down to Earth's surface, planning to convert all matter into pure nutrition. The young counselors watched as the beams struck Earth. For a moment, it looked like the planet would be destroyed like all the others. Then something impossible happened. The energy beams stopped working. Morton said something was blocking them. Something the Devourers had never encountered before. The dome showed the space around Earth changing. What had looked like empty space was suddenly filled with massive structures, weapons platforms, defense stations, battle fleets. The humans had been busy, Morton explained. 400 years of preparation, 400 years of building and planning, and getting ready for the next threat. The young counselor stared in shock. The space around Earth looked like the most heavily defended system in the galaxy. How had the humans built all of this without anyone noticing? Stealth technology? Morton answered their unspoken question. The humans had learned to hide in plain sight. Everything you are seeing was there all along. We just could not see it. The images showed the human defense fleet engaging the Devourers, but these were not the crude ships that had fought the machine empire. These were sleek, advanced vessels that looked like they belonged to a galactic superpower. Where did they get this technology? Asked Zarwick. They built it, Morton replied. Humans have one trait that makes them more dangerous than any other species in the galaxy. They learn from their enemies. Every time someone attacks them, they become stronger. The battle was fierce. The Devourers were powerful, and they had eaten hundreds of worlds. But the humans were ready for them. The humans had studied Devour biology, Morton explained. They knew how the crystal creatures fed, so they built weapons that turned the Devour's own feeding process against them. The dome showed human ships firing strange beams at the crystal invaders. Where the beams hit, the Devourers began to dissolve. They were being consumed by their own feeding mechanism. Poetic justice, said Sage Quillix. The eaters became the eaten. The battle lasted 3 days. When it was over, the mighty Devourer fleet was nothing but crystal dust floating in space. Another species had learned too late that attacking Earth was suicide. And their home swarm? Asked Brickstall. Elder Morton's expression grew very dark. The humans hunted them down, all of them across 3 star systems. They said they could not allow a species that ate planets to continue existing. The young counselors were silent. 3 extinctions. 3 entire species wiped out because they had attacked one small blue planet. Now do you understand? Morton asked. Now, do you see why we leave Earth alone? Counselor Zarwick raised her crystal arm again. But Elder Morton, this was hundreds of years ago. Surely the humans have not continued to advance their military technology. Elder Morton and the other ancient counselors exchanged looks. Sage Quell began to laugh. A sound like wind through broken glass. Young one, Quell said. Humans never stop preparing for war. It is what they do. It is who they are. What do you mean? Asked Zarwick. Elder Morton touched his control panel. A new image appeared on the dome. It showed Earth as it was today. The planet looked peaceful. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents. But the space around it was different. The young counselors could see hints of structures that had not been there in the historical images. Defense platforms that made the ones from 400 years ago look like toys. The humans have had 4 centuries of peace, Morton said. No one has been foolish enough to attack them since the Devourers. Do you know what they have been doing with that time? What? Whispered Zarwick. Getting ready for the next war. The session ended in silence. The young counselors filed out of the hall, their minds reeling from what they had learned. They finally understood why the ancient species had been taking bets on the Zephyrian invasion. It was not a question of whether Admiral Vexfic would lose. It was a question of how fast. And somewhere in space, the Zephyrian invasion fleet continued toward Earth, completely unaware that they were flying toward their own extinction. Admiral Vex stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Fang. He was very proud of his ship. It was the largest vessel in the Zephyrian fleet, armed with the most powerful weapons his species had ever built. The ship was 5 miles, long and covered in gleaming armor that reflected the stars around him. His crew worked at their stations. They were all excited about the coming invasion. Zephyrins had been expanding their empire for centuries, but they had never conquered a world as rich as Earth. This would make them all wealthy and famous. Admiral called out Lieutenant Sexmore from the sensor station. We are approaching the outer edge of the solar system. Should I begin active scanning? Admiral Vexic waved one of his scaled hands. No need, Lieutenant. Our spy probes have already mapped everything. This system has no defenses, no patrol ships, no warning satellites. These humans are completely helpless. The bridge crew laughed. They found it amusing that any species could be so unprepared for war. In Zephyrian culture, every world had massive defense fleets. Every planet was covered in weapon platforms. The idea of leaving a world undefended was foolish beyond belief. "Sir," reported the navigation officer, "we will reach Earth in 6 hours at current speed." "Excellent," Admiral Vex said. He turned to his communications officer. "Prepare the surrender demand. We will broadcast it to every human settlement when we arrive. They will have 1 hour to submit to Zephyrian rule before we begin bombing their cities." The fleet continued toward Earth. 200 ships in perfect formation. Battleships, destroyers, troop transports, and supply vessels. It was the largest invasion force the Zephyrian Empire had ever assembled. But they were not alone in space deep. In the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, sensors watched the approaching fleet. These sensors had been hidden there for decades, disguised as ordinary space rocks. They looked like natural objects, but they were actually some of the most advanced detection equipment in the galaxy. The moment the Zephyrian ships crossed into the solar system, alarms began ringing in secret locations across Earth. In a bunker hidden beneath the Colorado mountains, Colonel Sarah Chun was drinking coffee and reading reports when the alert came through. Red lights flashed across the command center. A loud siren filled the air. "Contact!" shouted the duty officer. "Multiple unknown vessels entering the system. Configuration suggests hostile intent." Colonel Chun put down her coffee cup and walked to the main display screen. She was a small woman with short black hair and calm eyes. She did not look like someone who could threaten an entire alien fleet, but looks could be very deceiving. "How many ships?" she asked. 200, ma'am. Various sizes. Largest vessel is approximately 8 kilometers in length." Colonel Chun nodded. "Classification based on formation and approach vector. Definitely an invasion fleet, ma'am." Around the command center, dozens of military personnel were already working at their stations. This was not the first time Earth had detected incoming hostiles. The humans had been preparing for this moment for 400 years. "Alert status?" Colonel Chun asked. "DEFCON 2, ma'am. All orbital platforms are coming online. The fleet is mobilizing. Ground forces are moving to defensive positions." Colonel Chen walked to a wall covered in screens showing different parts of Earth and the space around it. To an outside observer, everything looked normal. Cities went about their daily business. Ships moved peacefully between planets. Nothing seemed different, but that was an illusion. High above Earth's surface, defense satellites that had been disguised as space junk suddenly came to life. Weapon platforms hidden inside what looked like innocent research stations powered up their guns. Patrol ships that had been invisible to sensors dropped their stealth fields and began moving into position. In space, docks hidden behind the moon. Battle fleets that had been waiting for decades started their engines. These were not the crude ships that had fought the Devourers 4 centuries ago. These were weapons of war that incorporated technology from every species that had ever attacked Earth. "Time to intercept?" Colonel Chun asked. 4 hours 37 minutes, until they reach Earth orbit. "Ma'am, more than enough time." Colonel Chun turned to her communications officer. "Signal the fleet. Authorization. Omega 77. Tell them it's time to go to work." Meanwhile, Admiral Vexic was enjoying what he thought would be his last peaceful meal before the invasion. He was eating in his private dining room, looking out at the stars through a large window. In a few hours, he would be the conqueror of Earth. His name would be remembered forever in Zephyrian history. "Admiral!" The voice came through his communication device, urgent and worried. "Admiral, you need to come to the bridge immediately." Vextech sighed and put down his food. "What is it, Lieutenant? Have the humans sent a surrender message already?" "No, sir. Something else or something impossible. You need to see this." Admiral Vexvik walked quickly to the bridge. When he arrived, he found his crew staring at their sensor displays in confusion and fear. "Report," he demanded. Lieutenant Sexmore turned to face him. His 3 eyes were wide with shock. "Admiral, our sensors are detecting objects that were not there before." "What kind of objects?" "Ships, sir. Lots of ships. They appear to be materializing out of empty space." Admiral Vexic looked at the main display screen. It showed the space around Earth, which had been completely empty just an hour ago. Now it was filled with dots of light, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. "That is impossible," he said. "Our advanced scouts reported no defenses, no fleet, nothing. "Sir," called out the tactical officer, "I am reading massive energy signatures. These are not civilian vessels. These are warships." Admiral Vexic felt a cold fear growing in his stomach, but he pushed it down. He was a Zephyrian warrior. He did not retreat from primitive species. "How many ships?" he asked the tactical officer worked at his station for several minutes. "Sir, I count at least 500 vessels, possibly more. They are still appearing." "Still appearing? What do you mean?" "They seem to be dropping some kind of stealth technology, sir. Ships that were invisible are becoming visible. I think they were there all along." Admiral Vexic stared at the screen. 500 ships was more than twice the size of his invasion fleet. But that was impossible. The humans were supposed to be primitive. They barely had spaceflight. "Sir," the communications officer spoke up, "we are receiving a transmission from the human fleet. Put it on screen." The main display changed to show a human woman in a military uniform. She was sitting in what looked like a command chair, surrounded by officers and displays. Behind her, Admiral Vex could see other humans working calmly at their stations. "Attention, unknown vessels," the woman said in a calm, professional voice. "This is Commander Sarah Chun of the Terran Defense Force. You have entered restricted space without permission. State your intentions immediately." Admiral Vextha stepped forward. "I am Admiral Vext of the Zephyrian Empire. We have come to claim this world for our people. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick." Commander Chun looked at him for a moment, and she smiled. It was not a happy smile. "Admiral," she said, "let me explain something to you. This is Earth. We don't surrender. We don't negotiate. We don't run away. What we do is fight. And we're very, very good at it. You cannot threaten us." Admiral Vexthi shouted. "We have 200 ships. We have the most advanced weapons in the galaxy." Commander Chun's smile grew wider. "Admiral, let me show you something." The transmission changed to show the space around Earth from a different angle. Admiral Vextha gasped. There were not 500 human ships. There were not even 1,000. There were over 3,000 battle cruisers the size of small moons. Destroyer squadrons moving in perfect formation. Carrier groups launching fighter craft by the hundreds. Weapon platforms that looked like they could crack planets, and all of them were pointed at his fleet. "How?" Admiral Vexthi whispered. 400 years of preparation," Commander Chun replied. 400 years of building and planning, and getting ready for visitors like you. Did you really think you were the first species to try invading Earth? Admiral Vexvik's crew was panicking now. Officers were shouting reports about more ships appearing, about weapon systems powering up, about targeting computers locking onto their vessels. "This is impossible." Admiral Vex said, "Our intelligence. Reports said you were primitive. You have barely left your own planet." "Oh, we've left our planet," Commander Chun said. "We just don't advertise it. We prefer to let people think we're harmless. It makes our job easier." "What job?" "Protecting our home." On the tactical display, Admiral Vexvives could see his fleet position. They were completely surrounded. Human ships had appeared on all sides, above and below. There was no escape route. "Admiral," his tactical officer called out, "they have weapons lock on every ship in our fleet. I count over 10,000 targeting systems focused on us." Admiral Vexic realized he had made a terrible mistake, but he was still a Zephyrian warrior. He would not back down. "All ships," he ordered, opened fire. "Show these humans the power of the Zephyrian Empire." 200 alien ships opened fire at once. Energy beams and missile volleys filled space with deadly light. It was the most concentrated attack the Zephyrins had ever launched. The human ships absorbed the attack without even slowing down, shields holding at 98%. Someone reported calmly in the background of Commander Chun's transmission. "Minor fluctuations on deck 7 through 12. No damage reported." Admiral Vexvik stared in horror. His entire fleet's opening salvo had barely scratched the human defenses. "Our turn," Commander Chun said. The human fleet fired back. What happened next would be remembered as the shortest space battle in galactic history. The human weapons were not like anything the Zephyrins had ever seen. Instead of simple energy beams, they fired concentrated packets of destruction that seemed to ignore shields and armor. The first Zephyrian ship to be hit simply vanished. One moment it was there, the next it was a cloud of expanding particles. "Evasive maneuvers," Admiral Vexvex screamed. all ships' evasive maneuvers. But the human weapons followed them. The targeting systems locked onto ships and stayed locked, no matter how fast or far they moved. Within minutes, half of the Zephan fleet was gone. "Sir," Lieutenant Kexmore called out. "The Scarlet Blade and the Iron Fist are reporting total system failures. They're drifting." "What kind of failures?" "Everything, sir. Power, engines, weapons, life support. It's like their ships just ... stopped working." Admiral Vexvik looked at the tactical display. Several of his ships were floating dead in space, their crews trapped inside powerless hulks. The humans were not just destroying ships, they were capturing them. "Sir," the communications officer said, "we're receiving another transmission from the human commander. Put it through." Commander Chun appeared on screen again. She still looked calm and professional, as if destroying an invasion fleet was just another day at the office. "Admiral Vexvik," she said, "you have two choices. You can continue fighting and watch your entire fleet get destroyed, or you can surrender and live to tell others what happens when you attack Earth." "Never," Admiral Vexvik shouted. "Zephians do not surrender." "I was hoping you'd say that," Commander Chun replied, "because we need to send a message to the rest of the galaxy, and messages are more effective when they're written in wreckage." The human fleet pressed their attack. Advanced weapons that the Zephrons could not understand tore through their ships like paper. Boarding pods launched from human vessels carrying soldiers to capture enemy crews. Defense platforms that had been hidden throughout the solar system added their firepower to the assault. Admiral Vexvik watched his proud fleet die around him. Ships that had taken years to build were destroyed in seconds. Warriors who had trained their entire lives were defeated by an enemy they had never expected to face. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we've lost 70% of the fleet. The survivors are requesting permission to retreat." "Retreat where, Admiral?" Vexvik asked bitterly. "They have us surrounded." As if she had heard him, Commander Chun's voice came through the communication system again. "Admiral, I'm going to do you a favor. I'm going to let some of your ships escape. Not because I'm merciful, but because I want them to go home and tell everyone what happened here today." "Why?" Admiral Vexvik asked. "Because," Commander Chun said, "maybe the next species that thinks about invading Earth will be smart enough to stay home." The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes from first shot to ceasefire. When it was over, only 37 Zephyrian ships remained intact. The rest were either destroyed or floating powerless in space. Admiral Vexvik's flagship, the Crimson Fang, was one of the disabled vessels. Human boarding teams had taken control of the ship without firing a shot. They had simply walked through the hull as if the armor was not there. Now Admiral Vexvik found himself sitting in his own meeting room, facing Commander Sarah Chun in person. She was even smaller than she had looked on the screen, but her presence filled the room. So she said, sitting down across from him, "What do you think of Earth now?" Admiral Vexvik had no answer. Everything he had believed about humans was wrong. Everything his intelligence reports had told him was false. "How?" he finally managed to ask. "How did you build all of this without anyone knowing?" Commander Chun smiled. "Admiral, let me tell you a secret. We've been aware of galactic civilization for over 600 years. We know about the Council. We know about all the major species. We even know about the betting pools your announcement started. Then why do you hide?" Because Commander Chun said, "It's easier this way. When people think you're primitive, they leave you alone. When they know you're dangerous, they try to stop you before you become a threat." She stood up and walked to the window. Outside, human ships were collecting the wreckage of the Zephyrian fleet. "We learned a long time ago that the best way to protect Earth is to make sure nobody wants to attack it. And the best way to do that is to make sure everyone knows what happens to species that try." Admiral Vexvik looked at her with new understanding. "You're going to let us go so we can warn others." "Exactly. You're going to go home and tell everyone about Earth's defenses, about our weapons, about what we do to invaders. And hopefully the next species that thinks about attacking us will decide to find easier prey." She turned back to face him. "Because, Admiral, this was just our weekend militia. Our actual military is much more impressive." Admiral Vexvik felt his blood turn cold. "This was not your main defense force." "Oh no," Commander Chun said cheerfully. "This was just the local volunteers. The Terran Defense Force proper is currently ... elsewhere. She did not say where elsewhere was. Admiral Vex did not want to know. 2 hours later, the surviving Zephyrian ships began their long journey home. They carried with them a story that would change how the galaxy thought about Earth forever. And in the secret command bunker beneath the Colorado mountains, Colonel Sarah Chun filed her report and went back to drinking her coffee. Just another day protecting humanity. Admiral Vexic sat in the prisoner holding area of his own ship. The room was comfortable enough with a bed and basic facilities, but he was still a captive on his own flagship. Human guards stood outside the door, polite but alert. He had been given time to think about what had happened. His proud invasion fleet had been destroyed in 17 minutes. 17 minutes. He had planned this invasion for 2 years, and it had lasted less time than it took to eat a meal. The door opened, and Commander Sarah Chun walked in. She was carrying a tray with food and something that smelled like coffee. She sat it down on the small table and sat across from him. "Feeling better, Admiral?" she asked in a friendly voice. Admiral Vextha looked at her with confusion. "You are treating me well for a prisoner." "You're not exactly a prisoner," Commander Chun replied. "Think of yourself as a ... guest. A guest who happened to attack our home. Why are you being kind to me? Your people destroyed my fleet." Commander Chun poured herself a cup of coffee from a small pot on the tray. "Admiral, let me ask you something. Do you have children?" The question surprised him. "Yes, 2 sons and a daughter." "Do you love them?" "Of course I do." "What kind of question is that?" "The kind that explains everything," Commander Chun said. "You see, Admiral, humans are very good at separating the soldier from the person. You attacked our home. That made you an enemy, but you're also someone's father. That makes you a person worth treating with respect." Admiral Vexvik did not understand. In Zephyrian culture, enemies were enemies. There was no middle ground. "I want to show you something," Commander Chun continued. "Something that will help you understand what you walked into today." She pressed a button on a small device. The walls of the room became transparent, showing the space around Earth. Admiral Vexvi gasped at what he saw. The human fleet was enormous. Thousands of ships in perfect formation, stretching as far as the eye could see. But that was not what shocked him. What shocked him was what the ships were doing. They were not celebrating their victory. They were not looting the wreckage of his fleet. Instead, human vessels were carefully collecting the escape pods and damaged ships that contained surviving Zapurans. Medical ships were treating wounded aliens. Rescue teams were working around the clock to save as many lives as possible. "You are helping my people," Admiral Vexvik said in amazement. "Of course we are," Commander Chun replied. "They're hurt. We help hurt people. It's what we do. But we attacked you. We came here to conquer your world and enslave your people. Yes, you did, and we stopped you. But that doesn't mean we want your soldiers to die in space. Your people have families too." Admiral Vexvik watched human rescue teams pull Zephyrian survivors from damaged ships. The humans were being gentle and careful, treating their former enemies like precious cargo. "This makes no sense," he said. "Why save enemies who would have killed you?" Commander Chun smiled. "Because that's the difference between us and every other species that has attacked Earth. You see us as enemies to be destroyed. We see you as problems to be solved." She pressed another button. The view changed to show Earth itself. But this was not the Earth that Admiral Vexik had seen in his intelligence reports. The planet was covered in massive structures, cities that stretched across entire continents, orbital elevators reaching into space, industrial complexes that could build fleets of starships. This was not a primitive world. This was the home of an advanced galactic civilization. "How long have you been hiding this?" Admiral Vexvik asked. "We're not hiding it," Commander Chun said. "We just don't advertise it. There's a difference." The view shifted to show the space around Earth in more detail. What Admiral Vexik saw made his blood run cold. The solar system was not just defended, it was militarized. Weapon platforms floated between the planets, each one large enough to destroy a moon. Battle stations orbited every major celestial body. The asteroid belt had been turned into a massive shipyard where human vessels were being built by the hundreds. "This is impossible," Admiral Vexthi whispered. "How did you build all of this without the Galactic Council knowing?" "Who says they don't know?" Commander Chun replied. "Admiral, let me tell you a story. 400 years ago, after we dealt with the Devourers, we had a choice to make. We could reveal ourselves to the galaxy and take our place among the major powers, or we could stay hidden and keep building our strength. Why did you choose to hide? Because we studied galactic history. We learned about species that became too powerful too quickly. Do you know what happens to them?" Admiral Vexvik thought about it. "They are seen as threats. Other species band together to stop them." "Exactly. So, we chose a different path. We let everyone think we were still primitive, while we built the most advanced civilization in the galaxy." The view changed again. This time it showed human colonies on distant worlds, bases hidden in nebula, fleets patrolling sectors of space that were supposed to be empty. The humans had not just been defending Earth. They had been expanding across the galaxy in secret. "How many worlds do you control?" Admiral Vexvik asked. "Define control?" Commander Chun said with a smile. "We don't conquer planets like other species do. We don't enslave populations or strip worlds of resources. We prefer a lighter touch." The display showed a world that Admiral Vexthi recognized. It was Kepler-7, a planet that had been having problems with pirates for decades. The Galactic Council had tried to help, but their efforts had failed. But in the images he was seeing, Kepler-7 was peaceful. Trade ships moved safely between the planet and orbital stations. The pirate problem had been solved. "You did this?" he asked. "We helped," Commander Chun said. "Pirates were attacking civilian ships. That's not acceptable. So, we dealt with the problem." "How?" "We talked to them first, explained that piracy was bad for business, offered them jobs with our merchant fleet. Instead, most of them accepted, and the ones who didn't, Commander Chin's smile became a little colder. They learned that pirates who attack human-protected shipping lanes don't live very long." The display showed more examples. Worlds where human intervention had stopped wars. Trade routes where human patrols kept the peace. Colonies were human. Technology had solved food shortages and disease outbreaks. "You have been secretly helping the entire galaxy." Admiral Vexik realized. "We have interests to protect," Commander Chun said. "A peaceful galaxy is good for business. War and chaos cost money, so we try to keep things stable. But you do this in secret. Why not work openly with the Galactic Council?" "Because the Council is slow and bureaucratic. By the time they decide to act, thousands of people are already dead. We prefer faster solutions." Admiral Vexvek was beginning to understand. The humans had not been hiding from galactic civilization. They had been secretly managing it. "How long have you been doing this?" he asked. "Since shortly after the Devourer incident. We realized that the galaxy was full of problems that needed solving. So we started solving them." The display changed to show a star map. Red dots marked conflicts, pirate attacks, and other problems across the galaxy. But as Admov watched, the red dots began disappearing. One by one, problems were being resolved. Every time a crisis appears, it mysteriously gets solved, Commander Chun explained. Food shortage. Relief supplies arrive from unknown benefactors. Pirate attacks. The raiders vanish without a trace. Border disputes. Neutral mediators appear to negotiate peace, and no one realizes you are behind it. Most people don't want to look too closely at good fortune. When problems go away, they're just happy they're gone. Admiral Vexvex stared at the star map. The human sphere of influence covered nearly half the galaxy. They were not just a hidden superpower. They were the hidden superpower that kept galactic civilization running. "But why tell me this?" he asked. "Why reveal your secrets?" Commander Chin's expression became serious. "Because, Admiral, you're going to go home and tell your people about what happened here today. And when you do, I want you to tell the whole truth." "What truth?" "That Earth is not just defended. Earth is the guardian of this galaxy. We keep the peace. We solve the problems. We stop the threats that would destroy civilizations." She stood up and walked to the transparent wall. Outside, human ships continued their rescue operations. "Your empire has been expanding for centuries," she said, "taking worlds by force, enslaving populations, creating instability wherever you go. Do you think we haven't noticed?" Admiral Vexik felt a chill run down his spine. "You have been watching us." "We watch everyone. and we've been waiting for the Zephyrian Empire to cross a line that would require our intervention. What line? Attacking innocent worlds that can't defend themselves. You've been getting more aggressive lately, more willing to use violence against civilian populations. That's not acceptable. The display changed to show recent Zephyrian conquests. Admiral Vex saw his own forces bombing cities and enslaving populations, but he also saw something else. In each case, after the Zephyrians left, mysterious help had arrived for the survivors. "You have been helping the people we conquered," he said. "Of course, we have. They needed help. Their governments were destroyed. Their infrastructure was damaged. Their people were suffering. How? Medical supplies, food, aid, technology to rebuild their worlds. And sometimes, if they asked for it, help in fighting back." Admiral Vexic thought about recent reports from the frontier. Several Zephyrian outposts had been mysteriously destroyed. Occupation forces had vanished without a trace. His military leaders had blamed rebels and pirates. "It was you," whispered. "Sometimes the best way to help people is to remove the source of their problems," Commander Chun said simply. "You have been fighting a secret war against my empire." "No, Admiral. We've been preventing your empire from committing genocide. There's a difference." She turned back to face him. "But attacking Earth directly, that crossed a different line entirely. That was a direct threat to our home, and we don't tolerate threats to our home." Admiral Vexic was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked the question that had been bothering him since the battle ended. "What happens now? You defeated my fleet. You could destroy my empire if you wanted to. What are you going to do?" Commander Chun smiled again. It was not a threatening smile, but it was not entirely friendly either. "That depends on what your empire does next." She said, "You have two choices. You can continue your expansion and your aggression, knowing that we will be there to stop you every time. Or you can change. Change how? Stop attacking innocent worlds. Stop enslaving populations. Start trading instead of conquering. Start helping instead of hurting. And if we choose to keep fighting," Commander Chin's smile disappeared entirely. "Then you'll learn what happened to the Skull Hunters, the Machine Empire, and the Devourers. Because, Admiral, what you saw today was just us defending our home. You don't want to see what we're like when we go on the offensive." Admiral Vexvik believed her. After what he had witnessed, he had no doubt that the humans could destroy his entire species if they chose to. "How do I convince my people to change?" he asked. "Zurians have been warriors for thousands of years. Conquest is our way of life. That's your problem to solve," Commander Chun said. "But I'll give you some advice. Show them what you saw here today. Show them what we're capable of. Explain that the galaxy is not an empty frontier waiting to be conquered. It's a neighborhood with rules, and we enforce those rules." She pressed a button, and the walls became solid again. "Your ships will be repaired and resupplied for the journey home. Your wounded will receive medical treatment. Your dead will be returned to you with full honors. You would do that for enemies. We would do that for anyone," Commander Chun replied. "Because that's who we are. We fight when we have to. We help when we can. And we never forget that every enemy was someone's child." She walked toward the door, then paused. "Admiral, I want you to remember something when you get home. Today, you met the humans who protect this galaxy, the ones who keep the peace, and solve the problems and stop the threats." She looked back at him with eyes that seemed much older than her face. "Pray that you never meet the humans who start wars." The door closed behind her, leaving Admiral Vex alone with his thoughts, and the terrible knowledge that his species had just made an enemy of the most powerful force in the galaxy, an enemy that was offering them one chance to change before it decided they were too dangerous to exist. 3 weeks after the battle at Earth, the Galactic Council Hall was more crowded than it had ever been. Representatives from every major species had come to hear what the Zephyrin survivors had to say. News of the failed invasion had spread. Across the galaxy like wildfire, Elder Counselor Morton sat in his ancient chair, watching the chaos below. Young counselors were arguing loudly. Some demanded immediate action against Earth. Others insisted that the humans had only defended themselves. A few suggested that the entire story was made up, but the older counselors sat in silence. They knew the truth. Admiral Vexthik stood at the center of the hall. He looked much older than he had 3 weeks ago. His scales had lost their shine. His three eyes were haunted by what he had seen. When he spoke, his voice was quiet and broken. "Honored counselors," he began, "I have come to tell you about Earth, about what really happened when my fleet tried to invade their world." The hall grew quiet. Everyone wanted to hear this story. "I thought I was attacking a primitive planet." Admiral Vexthy continued. "My intelligence report said the humans had no defenses, no space fleet, no weapons that could threaten us." He paused and looked around the hall. "I was wrong. I was wrong about everything." For the next hour, Admiral Vexvik told his story. He described the human fleet that appeared from nowhere, the battle that lasted only 17 minutes, the weapons that could destroy ships or disable them without a trace. But more importantly, he told them about Commander Sarah Chun, about her offer of mercy, about the humans who rescued Zephyrian survivors and treated them with kindness. "They could have killed us all," he said. "They had the power to destroy my entire species if they wanted to. But instead, they showed us mercy. They saved our wounded. They sent us home with a warning." "What warning?" asked Counselor Zerowick. Admiral Vexthius' voice became even quieter. "That the galaxy has rules, and they enforce those rules." The young counselors erupted in argument again. Some called Admiral Vexik a coward. Others demanded proof of his claims. A few insisted that the humans must be stopped before they became too powerful. But their arguments were interrupted by a new voice. "He speaks the truth." Everyone turned to see who had spoken. It was Elder Counselor Hetrin of the Ancient Builders. His species was almost as old as the Caithmore, and they rarely spoke in council sessions. "I have seen the evidence," Hetrin continued. "Our deep space monitors recorded the entire battle. The human fleet that Admiral Vex described is real. Their weapons are real. Their power is real. Then we must act," shouted Counselor Brixtall of the warrior clans. "We cannot allow one species to become so powerful. We must unite the galaxy against them before they conquer us all." Elder Morton finally spoke. His voice was tired and sad. "Young Bictall, do you really think this is the first time we have had this conversation?" The young warrior looked confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean, Morton said that we have known about human capabilities for centuries. We have known about their hidden fleets. We have known about their advanced technology. We have known about their secret interventions across the galaxy." The hall erupted in shocked voices. The younger counselors could not believe what they were hearing. "You knew?" Zerowick demanded. "You knew about this and said nothing." "We said nothing," Sage Quelix explained, "because saying something would have started a war that would have destroyed galactic civilization." "How can you be sure?" asked a counselor from the hive minds. "Because Elder Morton said quietly, 'We tried to stop them once before.'" The hall fell completely silent. This was a secret that had been hidden for over 2 centuries. 200 years ago, Morton continued, a coalition of 12 species decided that Earth was becoming too dangerous. They assembled the largest fleet in galactic history, 5,000 ships, the combined military might of a dozen civilizations. "What happened?" Admiral Vexve asked, though he was afraid to hear the answer. "They never came home," Morton said simply. 5,000 ships gone without a trace. We received one message from the fleet commander before they disappeared. What did it say? "Do not send more ships." The young counselor stared in horror. 5,000 ships was larger than most species' entire military forces. The idea that they could all be destroyed or captured was beyond belief. "Since then," Hetron added, "we have maintained our current policy regarding Earth. We do not interfere with them. We do not threaten them. We do not even acknowledge their existence in official records." "But why?" Zerowick asked. "If they are so powerful, why do they not rule the galaxy?" "Because," a new voice said, "that is not what we want." Everyone turned toward the entrance to the hall. A human woman was walking down the central aisle. She was small and seemed harmless, but her presence made the entire hall feel different, more serious. More dangerous. Behind her walked several other humans. They were all wearing simple clothes that looked like diplomatic uniforms. They carried no visible weapons, but every alien in the hall could sense that these were not ordinary diplomats. The human woman reached the center of the hall and smiled at the assembled counselors. It was a warm, friendly smile that somehow made everyone feel both safe and terrified at the same time. Honored counselors, she said in perfect galactic standard. I am Ambassador Sarah Chun of the Terran Diplomatic Corps. I have come to address some misunderstandings about my people. Elder Morton leaned forward in his chair. Ambassador Chun, welcome to the Galactic Council. Though I must say this is unexpected. I apologize for the surprise, Ambassador Chun replied. But recent events have forced us to change our policy of non-engagement. She looked around the hall, making eye contact with representatives from dozens of different species. For centuries, we have preferred to work behind the scenes, quietly solving problems, preventing conflicts, keeping the peace. But Admiral Vex, this invasion attempt has made it clear that this approach is no longer sufficient. What do you mean? Asked Counselor Zarowick. I mean that too many species still believe Earth is a target they can attack with impunity. This belief is dangerous for everyone involved. Ambassador Chun gestured to one of her assistants who activated a holographic projector. The dome above the hall filled with images of space battles, destroyed fleets, and burning worlds. These are the remains of every fleet that has attacked Earth in the past 800 years, she explained calmly. 43 different species, over 15,000 ships, millions of casualties. The images were horrifying. The young counselors had never seen such massive destruction. Each time, Ambassador Chun continued, we hoped that word would spread, that other species would learn that attacking Earth was suicide. But apparently the message has not been clear enough. What message are you trying to send? Asked Brixtel. But Earth is not a target. Earth is a guardian. We do not conquer worlds. We protect them. We do not start wars. We end them. She gestured again, and the hologram changed to show something. Different peaceful worlds, thriving colonies, trade routes filled with merchant ships. This is what we actually do, Ambassador Chun said. We maintain stability. We prevent conflicts. We ensure that civilizations can grow and prosper without fear of extinction. You do this in secret, Admiral Vex observed. We did it in secret, Ambassador Chun corrected. But that policy ends today. She turned to address Elder Morton directly. Honored Elder, we formally request membership in the Galactic Council. The hall erupted in shocked voices. Humans joining the council would change everything. They would become an official part of galactic civilization instead of hidden guardians. But why now? Morton asked. You have remained independent for so long because the galaxy is changing. Ambassador Chun replied. New threats are emerging. Species like the Zephyrian Empire are becoming more aggressive. Conflicts are spreading faster than we can contain them. It is time for us to work openly instead of in the shadows. What kind of threats? Asked Hetron. Ambassador Chen's expression became grim. Have any of you wondered why the Devourers chose to attack Earth 400 years ago? They had consumed hundreds of worlds. Why did they suddenly decide to target a planet that was supposed to be primitive? The ancient counselors exchanged worried looks. This was a question that had never been answered, because something was driving them toward us. Ambassador Chun explained. Something that wanted the Devourers to destroy Earth. Something that saw us as a threat to its own plans. What kind of something? Zarowick asked nervously. Something that feeds on chaos and war. Something that grows stronger when civilizations destroy each other. Something that has been manipulating galactic politics for thousands of years. The hall was completely silent now. Every counselor was listening intently. We call them the Whisper Lords. Ambassador Chun continued. They exist in the spaces between dimensions. They cannot directly enter our reality, but they can influence minds, push thoughts, encourage conflicts. She gestured to the hologram, which now showed a star map with dark areas spreading across it. Every major war in galactic history, every species extinction, every failed civilization, all of it has been orchestrated by entities that want to see our reality consumed by chaos. That is impossible, protested a counselor from the Harmony Singers. Is it? Ambassador Chain asked. Think about it. Why do peaceful species suddenly become aggressive? Why do trade disputes turn into genocidal wars? Why do rational beings make decisions that lead to their own destruction? The counselors began to murmur among themselves when they thought about it. Many historical conflicts did seem to follow patterns that made no logical sense. The Whisper Lords have been growing stronger, Ambassador Chun continued. More active, more willing to take direct action. The recent increase in galactic conflicts is not a coincidence. What can be done? Asked Elder Morton. We can fight them, Ambassador Chun said simply. But not alone. We need the combined strength of every major species. We need to work together, instead of against each other. She looked around the hall again. That is why we are revealing ourselves now. That is why we want to join the council. Not to rule you, but to protect you. To stand with you against enemies that threaten all life in this galaxy. Elder Morton was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke in his ancient, tired voice. What do you propose? A new charter, Ambassador Chun replied. New laws. A commitment from every member species to resolve conflicts peacefully. To share resources with those in need. To stand together against external threats. And if some species refuse to follow these laws, asked Brickstow. Ambassador Chun's smile became a little colder. Then they will be reminded that the galaxy has rules, and we enforce those rules. You would make war on species that refuse to comply. We would make peace, Ambassador Chun corrected. Whether they like it or not, the vote was held 3 hours later. Every counselor participated, even the youngest and newest members. The question was simple. Should Earth be granted membership in the Galactic Council? The result was unanimous. As Ambassador Chun signed the membership documents, she looked up at the assembled counselors. There is one more thing you should know, she said. Earth is not our only world anymore. We have colonies on 200 planets across the galaxy, hidden bases in 50 star systems. Our population is not the few billion that your records show. It is over 800 billion souls, the counselors gasped. 800 billion humans would make them one of the largest species in the galaxy. But do not worry, Ambassador Chun continued with a smile. We have not come to conquer. We have come to help, because that is what humans do. We protect what we love, and we love this galaxy. Elder Morton stood up from his ancient chair. Welcome to the Galactic Council, Ambassador Chun. May this partnership bring peace to all our worlds. Thank you, Elder Morton, Ambassador Chun replied. Now, shall we get to work? We have a galaxy to save. As the session ended, and the counselors filed out of the hall, Admiral Vexic approached Ambassador Chun. What will happen to my empire? He asked quietly. That depends on your emperor, she replied. We have prepared a proposal for peaceful integration, trade agreements, technology sharing, cultural exchange. Your people can choose to join the galactic community as partners instead of conquerors. And if we refuse, Ambassador Chun looked at him with kind but firm eyes. Admiral, your species is not evil. You are just young and confused about how the galaxy works. We will give you time to learn, but we will not allow you to continue hurting innocent people. How much time? As much as you need. But Admiral, remember what I told you on your ship. You met the humans who protect this galaxy. Pray that your people make the right choice. Admiral Vexic nodded and walked away. He had a long journey home and a difficult conversation waiting for him with his emperor. But for the first time since the battle at Earth, he felt hope. The humans had offered his people a chance to change, a chance to be better. He just hoped his species was wise enough to take it. In the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, Ambassador Sarah Chun looked up at the dome, showing the stars of their galaxy. Tomorrow, those stars would be a little safer, a little more peaceful, because Earth was no longer hiding in the shadows. The Guardians had finally come home.